This story is titled, At My Cousin's Wedding, I Mistakenly Called Her New Husband by Her Ex's Name. She slapped me, he left her, and now I'm somehow their couple's therapist. You know those family events where you tell yourself, just smile, eat the chicken, don't start a war? Yeah, that was the plan for my cousin Megan's wedding. Keyword was. Megan, 28F, has been the crown jewel of family dysfunction since birth. You know the type. All glitter, no brain-to-mouth filter. Grew up thinking humble was a perfume. Her big dream was to marry a man who could afford to support her eyelash extension addiction, and bless her toxic little heart, she finally landed one. Brad, 32M. Brad's personality was best described as beige, but his credit score could probably cure diseases. So naturally, they rushed into marriage like two drunk squirrels chasing the same nut. Then there's me, Kyle, 29M, the family's designated problem child, which is hilarious because my only crime was graduating college without a pregnancy scare or a felony. But Megan's always seen me as her charity case. You know that he's so funny because he's a failure vibe. Charming. And if you're wondering, yes, I already hated this wedding before the first glass of lukewarm Chardonnay hit my hand. Now, here's where it gets fun. Megan's ex, Chase, 29M, was the human embodiment of a regret tattoo. High school sweetheart, one-time fiancé, current walking restraining order. He cheated on Megan with her best friend, stole her dog, and keyed her car for good measure. Family lore says he also once tried to start an MLM for artisanal vape pens. Real catch. So you'd think Chase would be the last name I'd ever accidentally say out loud at her wedding, right? You'd think. Anyway, the ceremony was already hanging by a thread. Megan was doing that weird laugh-cry thing she does when she's faking happiness, and Brad had the emotional presence of a folding chair. I was a few drinks deep, feeling good, running on that sweet, it's not my life falling apart energy. When it was finally time for the big congratulations moment, you know, that fake hug fest where you tell the couple how inspired you are, I went in for my obligatory side hug with Megan and Brad. And what did my drunken, sleep-deprived, emotionally constipated brain decide to blurt out? Congrats, Chase. I mean, Brad. Brad. Definitely Brad. Silence. You could literally hear Megan's Botox cracking. She stared at me like I just urinated on the wedding cake. Brad blinked twice, slow and heavy, like Windows 95 trying to reboot. For half a second, I thought maybe we could all pretend it didn't happen. Maybe the open bar had numbed everyone's hearing. Nope. Megan, in full bridal armor, wound up and slapped me across the face so hard I think my great-grandchildren will inherit the handprint. Her bouquet flew out of her hand and smacked an old lady in the next row. Someone gasped. Someone else laughed. It was Art. Brad. Brad dropped Megan's hand like it was radioactive and mumbled, "You said his name," before storming off toward the parking lot like he was late for a CVS receipt printing competition. And that, my friend, was how I accidentally ended a marriage faster than Megan could end a Sephora gift card. So there I am, standing in the middle of this reception hall that smells like wilted roses and regret, with a handprint throbbing on my face and about 200 people trying to pretend they weren't living for the drama. Megan, still in full Disney villain mode, just stood there hyperventilating like someone had stolen her limited edition Contour palette. You could practically hear the gears grinding in her brain. How dare he ruin my perfect day? Completely missing the fact that she was the one who literally started swinging fists before the salad course. Meanwhile, Aunt Carol was already speed-walking toward us, wine glass in hand, looking like she'd trained her whole life for this exact level of public catastrophe. "Megan, honey, maybe sit down," she chirped, in that voice reserved for calming toddlers and unstable brides. "Megan?" Megan shrieked. No, shrieked. He ruined everything, and pointed at me like she was accusing me of war crimes at The Hague. I didn't even flinch. I just grabbed a shrimp cocktail off a passing tray because frankly, if I was going to be publicly executed, I wasn't doing it on an empty stomach. By now the DJ had gone into full panic mode, cranking the music up to an emergency October 10th, trying to drown out the screaming with "I Got a Feeling" by the Black Eyed Peas. Spoiler, it didn't help. Nothing says this wedding's on life support, like a room full of relatives slow dancing while a bride sobs into a floral centerpiece. Somewhere between Megan knocking over the guest book table and Uncle Paul recording the entire breakdown like he was auditioning for TMZ, Brad came back inside. I'll give him credit. He looked like he'd spent the last 15 minutes seriously weighing whether to fake his own death. His tie was off, his jacket was missing, and he had that 1,000-yard stare guys get after a car crash or a gender reveal party explosion. He cleared his throat. "I think we should maybe just call it a night. Not we should talk. Not we can work through this. Not love conquers all. Nope. Just call it a night." like he was canceling a mediocre bowling league. Megan didn't even argue. She just crumpled into a chair like a wet napkin while her makeup made a slow, tragic descent down her face. If you ever wanted to see a $5,000 bridal look dissolve into a crime scene, buddy, this was your chance. And me? I just stood there, chewing shrimp, wondering how the hell I went from polite guest to accidental homewrecker in under 20 minutes. It should have ended there. It didn't. Because after about 7 minutes of silence, so awkward I'm pretty sure it made the plants die, Megan looked up at me with mascara-streaked fury and spat. "You need to fix this." Like I was the bartender who served her a bad martini instead of the human landmine she stepped on herself. Congratulations to me. I was officially promoted to unpaid couples therapist by a woman who just tried to slap me into another dimension. I wish I could tell you I laughed in Megan's face when she told me to fix her marriage. I didn't. Mostly because she looked like she might actually stab me with one of those fake crystal napkin holders. So I just stood there, half-dead shrimp in hand, blinking at her like an idiot. "You have to talk to him," she hissed, clutching my arm like I was some last lifeboat on the Titanic. Her nails dug in enough to leave little half-moons in my skin. "You're the one who set him off." Set him off. Right. Like I hadn't watched Brad's soul slowly leaking out of his ears for the past year while Megan planned their future like she was ordering a Build-A-Bear. I didn't say that, of course. Instead, I mumbled, maybe he just needs time. Because what else do you tell a woman who just turned her wedding into a hostage situation? "No," she said, voice cracking, "he's going to leave. You have to fix it." And for the first time all night, Megan actually looked scared. Not angry scared. Not embarrassed scared. Just small. Like she realized, too late, that sometimes when you throw a match, the fire burns down your own house. Against all better judgment, I found myself nodding. Because apparently, I'm a sucker for crying brides and terrible life choices. Brad was easy enough to find. He was slumped against the hood of his rental car, tie in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling aimlessly like he thought he might find instructions for how to survive an emotional nuclear blast. When he saw me coming, he didn't move. Just let out a tired sigh and said, "If you're here to apologize, don't bother." I leaned against the car next to him, trying to find words that didn't sound like total bullshit. "I'm not here to apologize," I said. "Honestly, I think you're the only sane person in that building right now." Brad let out a laugh. Or maybe it was a sob. It was that kind of night. "Do you know," he said, staring out at the parking lot lights, "I forgot Chase's name until today. Like, completely forgot. And then you said it, and..." He trailed off, shaking his head. I didn't interrupt. Sometimes you don't need to pour gasoline. Sometimes you just let the fire burn itself out. "I wasn't mad you said it," Brad said finally. "I was mad because I realized if he walked through that door, half of me would expect her to go with him. That landed harder than I expected. It wasn't bitter or even cruel. It was just honest. The kind of truth people don't say out loud unless something inside them has already snapped." I looked at Brad, this guy who spent the last year being the human credit card for Megan's fantasy life, and I realized he wasn't some boring dude who couldn't keep her interested. He was just tired. Bone deep, soul deep tired. And maybe he'd been tired for a long time. Neither of us said anything for a while. The parking lot buzzed with cicadas. A leftover balloon from the wedding decorations bounced past us like a tiny, mocking ghost. "She wants you to come back?" I said eventually. Brad snorted. "Of course she does. Weddings are expensive." And yeah, there was some humor in his voice. But mostly there was sadness. The kind of sadness you don't joke away, no matter how many shrimp cocktails you steal. It was supposed to be simple. Talk Brad off the ledge, smooth Megan's ego, survive the night without needing stitches. But this family doesn't do simple. We specialize in catastrophes disguised as conversations. 20 minutes after our grim parking lot chat, Megan came charging outside like a hurricane in a ball gown. Mascara streaked her cheeks, and she clutched a half-eaten bread roll like a weapon. She aimed herself straight at Brad, shoving the bread into his chest like that would somehow anchor him to the wedding. "You're not leaving me over a stupid name slip," she snapped, voice raw. I opened my mouth to intervene, thought better of it, and settled for grimacing in the background. "You're not him." Megan kept going. "And I'm not her. This is just a misunderstanding." Brad stared at her without blinking. For one awful second, I thought he might buy it. Might let exhaustion and nostalgia pull him back into the sinking ship. But then he reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and flipped the screen toward her without a word. It was a photo. Megan, in a hotel room, pressed against a man who wasn't Brad, and worse, it wasn't Chase either. It was Landon, my best friend, the one who skipped the wedding because he had other plans. The one who always claimed he barely knew Megan outside of family gatherings. Megan's mouth fell open, but no sound came out. You were cheating? I blurted, voice cracking harder than I wanted. Brad let out a short, humorless laugh. Turns out Chase wasn't the biggest threat after all. The parking lot buzzed in the heavy silence. Somewhere inside, the DJ cluelessly shifted to Fix You by Coldplay, as if the universe was mocking us. Megan took a step back, shaking her head like she could physically undo the evidence in front of her. Brad didn't move. He didn't even look angry anymore, just hollow. Like whatever was left between them had finally crumbled into dust. I stood frozen, stomach sinking, realizing I hadn't accidentally triggered the collapse of Megan's marriage. It was already in ruins. All I'd done was shine a flashlight on the wreckage. For a long moment, no one said anything. The air between Megan and Brad stretched so tight I swear it hummed. I stayed exactly where I was, hands in my pockets, heart pounding hard enough to rattle my ribs. Megan finally found her voice, shaky, desperate, the sound of someone realizing their whole deck of lies just collapsed. It wasn't serious, she whispered, like that could somehow make it better. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Brad's face didn't change. He just tucked his phone back into his jacket like he was done carrying the evidence around. It meant enough to blow up a marriage, he said quietly. That's all it needed to mean. Megan took a step toward him. Brad, please. He took a bigger step back. And that's when she turned to me. Like somehow, this was my fault. Like if I just said the right words, waved the right emotional flag, all of this could be undone. Kyle, she said, voice cracking in that way that used to get her out of speeding tickets and family drama. You know it didn't mean anything. Tell him I'm not that person. I stared at her, genuinely stunned. Not at the betrayal, that part weirdly made sense. But at the fact that Megan still thought damage control was an option. That she thought I would stand there and vouch for her, like some idiot sidekick in her personal soap opera. You really think a couple of tears and a half-assed apology fixes this? I asked, my voice coming out colder than I expected. Megan flinched. Brad just watched, arms folded, like he wasn't even surprised anymore. You're supposed to be my cousin, Megan said, furious now. You're supposed to have my back. I laughed, bitter, tired. I had your back for 28 years, Meg. You burned it for a photo op. The slap didn't come this time. Maybe she finally realized there wasn't anyone left to hit. Brad took his keys out of his pocket, staring at them like he needed to remember how to use them. You two figure out whatever family drama you need to, he said, stepping away from the car. I'm done. And just like that, he walked off into the night. No dramatic final speech. No fight. Just a man who knew exactly how much he was worth, and who had finally decided to stop accepting clearance rack love. Megan stood there trembling, watching him disappear, and for a second, she looked less like my hurricane cousin and more like a scared kid who just realized nobody was coming to save her. I should have felt bad. Instead, all I felt was a strange kind of relief. Because for the first time in my entire messed up relationship with Megan, I wasn't the one cleaning up the wreckage. You'd think, after your husband catches you cheating on your wedding day, in front of half your family, with your cousin's best friend, that maybe, just maybe, you'd take the L and go quietly. But not Megan. Oh no. Megan doesn't lose. Megan rebrands. So 2 hours after Brad disappeared into the Colorado darkness, Megan was pacing the now-abandoned reception hall, barefoot, mascara melting down her face, muttering to herself like a mad scientist designing the worst PR campaign of all time. We just need to remind him, she said, spinning toward me, of everything we've built together. Built what exactly? Debt. An Instagram archive of forced smiles. Emotional trauma? I didn't say that. I just watched her with the same dead-eyed patience people have when they see someone sprinting toward a clearly closed sliding door. Kyle, she said, grabbing my arm. I need your help. If I had $1 for every time those words preceded a catastrophic life choice, I'd be living on a private island by now. I'm going to write him a letter, she announced, like she'd just discovered fire. A real one. Honest. Emotional. Raw. I blinked. You think a letter is going to fix infidelity, public humiliation, and emotional whiplash? It's about closure. Megan snapped. He needs to see that deep down, we're meant to be. Deep down. Deeper than Chase. Deeper than Landon. Maybe deep enough to hit rock bottom and keep digging. I should have stopped her. Any rational human being would have stopped her. Instead, I found myself sitting next to her at a table covered in half-eaten cake and discarded boutonnieres, coaching her through the world's worst apology letter. It went about as well as you'd expect. Dear Brad, she started, tongue poking out between her teeth like a kid doing arts and crafts. I know today was full of unexpected emotions. Unexpected emotions. That's one way to describe getting publicly cheated on. I acted impulsively because I was scared, she continued. Scared of how much I love you. I stared at her, genuinely in awe. Are you actually gaslighting him in your apology? Megan didn't even blink. It's not gaslighting. It's reframing. Ah yes, reframing. Like calling arson a surprise home renovation. By the time she finished, the letter was 4 pages of Olympic-level mental gymnastics and maybe 2 actual sentences of regret. Perfect, Megan said, sealing it into a glittery envelope left over from the wedding favors. Now we just have to deliver it. Somehow, I had been promoted from guy who ruined the wedding to guy delivering the apology for the bride who ruined the wedding. Megan, I said carefully, I really don't think he wants to see you right now, or hear from you, or exist in the same zip code as you. She just smiled, that wild, manic smile she used to get before a high school pep rally, and shoved the letter into my hand. That's why you're going to do it. And just like that, I was holding 4 pages of emotional blackmail wrapped in glitter glue, and apparently about to drive across town at 3 a.m. to deliver it to a man who probably hoped he'd never hear my name again. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I should have thrown the letter out the window. Instead, like the absolute moron I am, I found myself driving through town at 3:23 a.m., clutching Megan's glitter bomb of a love note like it was a cursed artifact. The streets were dead silent. Just me, a crumpled tuxedo, and the deep shame of a man about to make someone else's life even worse. I pulled up outside the Motel 6 Brad was holed up in, classy, right? And sat in the car for a full minute, engine ticking in the heat. Every fiber of my being screamed, turn around. Pretend you got mugged by a raccoon. Do literally anything else. But no, I got out, letter in hand, and shuffled across the cracked parking lot like some grim reaper of bad decisions. Brad answered the door after the second knock. He looked like he hadn't slept in a century. Still in his wedding suit, minus the jacket, tie undone, hair flattened on one side like he'd lost a fight with the pillow. For a second, we just stared at each other. What? Not a question. A death sentence. I held out the envelope. She asked me to give you this, I said, voice flat. Brad didn't take it. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered, stepping back and running a hand through his hair. She's still trying to spin this? I didn't move. I didn't blink. This was her mess. I was just the delivery guy. Finally, with the kind of sigh people make before getting a colonoscopy, Brad snatched the letter out of my hand. He didn't even wait. Ripped it open right there, skimmed the first page, and barked out a laugh so bitter it made my skin crawl. You want to know something funny? He said, waving the pages. This isn't even the first time. My stomach dropped. What? It came out before I could stop it. Brad's smile was razor thin. Landon? Sure. But there were others. Megan told me. During one of her emotional spirals. He air-quoted it so hard I thought he might sprain a finger. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Because what the hell do you even say to that? I stayed, Brad said, voice low. Because I thought. Maybe if I loved her hard enough, it would fix whatever was broken. He laughed again, softer this time. Turns out, you can't build a home on a sinkhole. For a second, I saw the real damage. Not the public embarrassment, not the cheating, not even the shattered wedding. It was the slow, grinding heartbreak of loving someone who would never love you back in the same way, and realizing it way too late. Brad dropped the letter into the trash can without another word. Tell her I hope she finds whatever she's looking for, he said. But it's not me anymore. And then he shut the door. No slamming, no shouting. Just a final, quiet click. It was over. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the cheap motel door, wondering how love could rot so quietly you didn't even notice until it collapsed under your feet. Then I got back in the car, tossed the glittery envelope onto the passenger seat, and started driving. Back toward Megan. Back toward whatever disaster she was about to unleash next. Because of course, when you think it can't get worse, it always can. By the time I made it back to the reception hall, the place looked like a crime scene. Half-eaten cake slices sagged on abandoned plates. Deflated balloons sagged in the corners like sad reminders of what the day was supposed to be. Megan sat alone at a table near the dance floor, still in her ruined dress, barefoot, staring at a champagne flute like it might whisper answers if she stared hard enough. When she saw me, her whole face lit up with frantic hope. Did he read it? She asked, bolting upright. Did it work? I didn't even have to say anything. She read it in my face. The hope flickered once, then died. Megan slumped back into the chair, the energy bleeding out of her all at once. He's really gone, she said, so quietly it barely reached me. I nodded. Yeah, he is. There was a long, aching silence. I didn't mean for any of this, she whispered, twisting the stem of the glass until it snapped in her hand. I just wanted to be happy. God, that hit harder than I wanted it to. Because the thing is, I believe her. I believe she wanted the fairy tale, the love story, the applause. She just never wanted to do the ugly work it actually takes to earn it. Megan pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking. For a second, I thought she was crying. Then she let out a sound that wasn't quite a sob, more like a broken laugh. How the hell did we get here? She choked out. I sat down across from her, exhausted. Same way everyone does, I said. One bad decision at a time. Another broken laugh. More honest than anything she'd said all night. You hate me now, don't you, Megan said, peeking at me through her fingers. I shook my head. I don't hate you, Megan. I meant it. Hate would have been easy. Hate would have been clean. What I felt was messy, a tangled, complicated sadness. The kind you only get when you realize someone you love is never going to be the person you kept hoping they could become. We sat there in the ruins for a long time, two broken people trying to make sense of a broken night. Finally, I stood up. My legs ached. My heart ached more. I can't fix this, I said, tucking the crumpled, glitter-stained envelope into my jacket pocket. You're gonna have to figure out how to fix yourself. Megan didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't promise to do better. Maybe that was the real miracle. I left her there, in the wreckage she built with her own hands, and stepped out into the cool, still night. The sky was starting to lighten at the edges, that bruised, purplish color that comes right before dawn. For the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe again. This wasn't my mess to carry anymore. It never should have been. And as I drove away from the worst wedding in family history, I realized something else. Sometimes you don't get closure. Sometimes you don't get apologies, or redemption arcs, or even satisfying endings. Sometimes you just get to walk away, still standing. And honestly, that's enough.